Afternoon. I'll call this meeting to order. This is the September 7th meeting of the Advisory Redistricting Commission for San Bernardino County. This afternoon, we would like to welcome Pastor Julius West from the city of Upland, who will lead us in the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Pastor West has been the lead and founding pastor of the Sooner Gayo Fellowship here in Upland since 2005. He has also been a chaplain with the Upland Police Department for 17 years. After living in Upland for 16 years, Pastor West currently resides in Fontana with his wife Tina, and he's the father of 2 adult children. Pastor West?
Father, I'm grateful for government officials who still believe that you're real, who prioritize seeking your face and making the important decisions that they need to make. I pray that you would grant open ears to hear the questions and the concerns and the needs of the leaders and the citizens of this city and throughout San Bernardino County. I pray, God, that there would be a spirit of congeniality this afternoon, a spirit of oneness and understanding during this meeting, as together we undertake the important process of discussing the business at hand. I'm asking, God, that you would give them wisdom for the decisions that need to be made, and that those decisions would result in fair representation for all the people of this county. Would you please bless everything that's done and said in this place today? In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Would you join me, please, in a pledge to the allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Pastor West. We greatly appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us this afternoon. At this time, ladies and gentlemen, we will take roll call of the commission, and for that, if I may ask Madam Secretary to take roll, please.
Thank you, Judge. If you could please respond with here or present. Judge Davis?
Present.
Vice Chair Nakeem? Here. Judge King? Commissioner Creffield?
Here.
Commissioner Little?
Here.
Commissioner Basley?
Here.
Commissioner Jernigan?
Here.
Commissioner Anderson? Here. Commissioner Shannon? Commissioner Runnels? Present. Commissioner Hazlett? Commissioner Wilson? Thank you, Judge. We have a quorum.
Madam Secretary, thank you so much. The first item on our agenda today is the discussion and approval of the September 2nd, 2021 Commission meeting minutes. At this time, we'll review those minutes and move to approve those minutes, but before doing so, I'm prepared to take any public comment on this item. Madam Secretary, do we have any public comment to address this item on the agenda?
No, Judge, we do not.
Very well. At this time, I will inquire if I have a motion to so approve those minutes from the September 2nd meeting.
So moved.
Do I have a second? I have a second from Judge King. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposed. I will say, Madam Secretary, for roll purposes, I am abstaining from the vote inasmuch as I did not attend the September 2nd meeting, which, as I understand it, was very capably led by my colleague seated to my right, to whom I am eternally grateful in my absences. So that motion is approved. Next on our agenda, we have a presentation and a report from Counsel Julie Serber. Ms. Serber?
Judge Davis, I have nothing to report at this meeting. Thank you.
Counsel, thank you so very much. Moving on to the next item then, we have a presentation scheduled on our agenda on redistricting in California. This is a presentation from Mr. Jonathan Mehta Stein, Executive Director of California Common Cause. And is this presentation, I'm assuming, going to be via video, Madam Secretary and Ms. Serber?
I believe it is a presentation from Mr. Mehta.
Wonderful. And do I have Mr. Jonathan Mehta Stein on the screen in front of me?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone.
All right, sir, good afternoon. We understand you have a presentation for us, and we are delighted to hear that presentation at this time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and let me just thank all of you for inviting me to join you. This is an esteemed group with weighty responsibilities, and it's a pleasure and a privilege to be able to share some thoughts on redistricting with you. Before I start my presentation, let me just share a little bit about where I'm coming from and who my organization is. California Common Cause is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization dedicated to building a better, healthier, more inclusive California democracy at the state and local levels. With respect to redistricting, we provide technical, legal, and policy expertise to community-based organizations, city councils, county boards of supervisors, and redistricting commissions like yourself. We are not interested in any partisan outcome or any particular set of maps. Our priority is to build redistricting processes that are as fair as possible, as accessible as possible, as participatory as possible, and as inclusive as possible. And so my training today, or my presentation today, excuse me, is aimed towards those goals. I'm going to share my screen now. If you have any difficulty seeing me, seeing the screen or hearing me, please just shout and I will make adjustments as necessary. And I'm not able to see you as I present, and so unfortunately I have to take your questions at the end of the presentation. Okay, so first I'm going to start with some redistricting basics, which I'm guessing are probably not necessary for the esteemed member of this the members of this council, and so I'm going to move very, very quickly. Obviously, redistricting happens because every district has to have the same number of people. This is a town or a county of 20 people. We have 4 districts. As a result, you've got 5 people per district. Now, over time, people move, people are born, people die, people are displaced by emergencies, natural disasters, or social conditions, and you have unequal districts. Over time, you redraw those districts, you replace them with new district lines that reclaim that population equality. Okay, so far, so good. Everyone knows everything I've just covered. The main takeaway, though, of course, is that redistricting can be a force for good or a force for bad. The next 2 slides show how different sets of districts that both look very reasonable can result in very, very different outcomes in terms of who has voice in the county's politics. In this hypothetical county, you have 16 people, 4 of whom are members of a minority group. The kind of minority is completely irrelevant for the purposes of the thought exercise. They could be business owners, they could be LGBT folks, they could be a racial and ethnic minority, they could be people who speak the same non-English language and use the same church and community center. It really does not matter. If we draw the district lines in one particular way that might look entirely reasonable, the minority population in this hypothetical only makes up 1/4 of each district, and they'll have very little voice in the local county politics. They will be unable to achieve representation of their choice, and no individual representative will feel that they're a meaningful part, a statistically or numerically meaningful part of the district. Now, you take that exact same population of folks and you draw the district lines in a slightly different way, and now all of a sudden that minority community goes from being 1/4 of each district to being 3/4 of one district, and now they have an opportunity to significantly influence the outcome of at least one district, right? So entirely reasonable looking district lines, one leads to a community being likely disempowered, and one leads to a community being likely empowered. All right, so those are redistricting basics, and as you're sitting there today, you certainly know all of that. I hope I moved through that as quickly or quickly enough for your liking. I want to move to a little bit about California's history with redistricting, and how some of what I described actually played out in reality over and over across California's many communities. It led to a better process at the state and local levels. So there's a really ugly origin story to California's redistricting story. On September 12th, 2001, a day after the terrorist attacks of 9/11, the California state legislature rushed through a vote to pass new district lines that preserved a sweetheart deal between Democrats and Republicans. It was not a political gerrymander to maximize the power of one political party. It was not a racial gerrymander to suppress the vote of a community of color. No, in fact, it was a handshake deal between Democrats and Republicans to make sure as many of them could get reelected as possible. And they had to twist and pervert district lines around the state in order to make it happen. So let's talk about some real life examples. This is an example of Watts. In November of 2003, a little bit of a story. In November of 2003, a freak storm dumped mountains of rain and hail on the community of Watts in Southern California. It overwhelmed the city's infrastructure. It flooded the community. About 150 buildings and homes were heavily damaged. 50,000 people lost power. Thousands of people sought aid from the county's emergency center. 100 people were rescued by firefighters from waist-deep snow and water. But the federal and state government were both slow to aid Watts in its time of need. Why? Because of many reasons, of course, including historical patterns of disinvestment and disenfranchisement, but also because the state legislature in its 2001 redistricting, in order to preserve incumbency advantage, had split Watts into 3 congressional districts. It had also split Watts into 3 state Senate districts. And what this meant was that Watts had no one to go to be a champion for it when the flooding of 2003 occurred. This is a quote from a congressional staffer at the time. He said, "At the time of the 2003 flood, I remember our office trying to be very responsive, but there was a lot of ping-ponging of constituents. Watts is cut into 3 different congressional and state Senate districts. Residents who live on the same street might live in different districts. There was a lot of unnecessary frustration. This would have never happened if all of Watts belonged in one district. And it wasn't just Watts, of course. This is the city of Long Beach in 2001. This boot was drawn specifically to bring a politician's house into Senate District 28. It forced other Senate districts to wrap around this house. It cut the city of Long Beach into 3 straight state Senate districts, and split up the Black community. It also violated a community of interest. The families who live around the port are affected by the constant exhaust of semi-trucks leaving the port to deliver goods around Southern California. The exhaust and pollution is so bad that the area is called Asthma Alley. Almost 1/3 of households have an adult with asthma. But the community had no unified representation that could be their champion and fight on those issues. This has happened at the local level as well. I'm sure some of you have seen this in your local communities. As more and more cities have moved to districting, that is to say they have moved from at-large elections to district elections, we've seen local shenanigans of this kind. This is the map of the city of Martinez, where the city was drawn into 4 long, slivery city council districts so that 4 city council members who live near one another could continue to run for re-election without having to oppose one another. So over time, Californians grew sick of these sorts of shenanigans and brought forward the state's Independent Redistricting Commission on the 2008 ballot measure that at the time was opposed by the state's Democratic Party and the state's Republican Party. The woman in this picture is my predecessor, actually, as the executive director of California Common Cause. Her name is Kathy Fung. And behind her is then Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, who was a primary supporter of the measure. That birthed the California Citizens Independent Redistricting Commission, which was lauded for being broadly representative. It has 5 Democrats, 5 Republicans, 4 folks who are declined to state, good regional representation, gender representation, racial and ethnic representation. And they led a highly public process. The California Citizens Redistricting Commission, in its first evolution, the 2011 commission, held over 100 public meetings. It met in over 32 cities over an 8-month period, and it received input from over 20,000 members of the California community. Among a variety of situations where they healed divisions created by previous redistricting cycles, they have the situation in Watts, where the leaders of Watts came forward in a unified way to advocate to keep Watts whole in the 2011 redistricting process, which is exactly what happened, and the city of Long Beach, where Long Beach leaders came together and advocated for keeping Long Beach together in one set of districts so that the folks impacted by the port could act together and with unified voice. Over the last decade or so, we've seen an independent redistricting revolution in California, where the model set by the state commission has been replicated not just in states all over the country, but in localities, in city councils, school boards, and county boards of supervisors that are now using independent redistricting commissions, hybrid redistricting commissions, and advisory redistricting commissions. You all are a part of a proud tradition of California taking redistricting and putting it in the hands of community and allowing the public to be in the driver's seat of the process. Okay, so let's talk concretely about how to build an accessible and participatory process in San Bernardino County. My goal is to share with you both the legal requirements you have with respect to outreach and public participation, but then also the best practices that are being used around the state that go beyond your legal minimums. The first key takeaway and the goal of all of what I have to say with the remainder of my presentation today is that we're trying to get beyond the usual suspects, the 10 to 50, maybe it's 100 people who take part in every conversation at the San Bernardino County Board of Supervisors. Everyone knows these folks. They're present at Board of Supervisors meetings, all their local commissions. Some of them might be in your audience today. God bless them for their commitment to our local democracies. These people are the glue, the engine of our local politics in many ways, but redistricting is a process that is meant to include all voices and all communities, including those who don't regularly participate. Okay, so the state law with respect to outreach requirements. The state law requires that you make a good faith effort to do the following: provide redistricting information to local media, including non-English outlets, provide information about redistricting to community organizations of various kinds, including those working in non-English speaking communities, and to create a redistricting webpage with several functions and providing a variety of kinds of information to the public. Here are some best practices, though, that I think that enable you to go beyond those legal minimums. I would urge you to overwhelm the community with outreach, publicity, and education. Redistricting is esoteric, it's technical, it happens once a decade. It takes a lot of coaching and urging and cajoling, perhaps, to get the community participating. Use all kinds of social media, including local influencers, thought leaders, opinion makers, and community leaders in San Bernardino County who have a following on Facebook or Nextdoor or Twitter or Instagram. Get them to tweet or post about redistricting. Distribute publicity materials to local media of all kinds, including traditional media, ethnic and non-English media, community newsletters, blogs. Everyone who writes about San Bernardino politics at any level, let them know that redistricting is happening and get them copy that they can place into their outlets. I would urge you to go further, to meet the people directly. Send a mailer to every household if you can. I should pause here and say, I recognize you do not have unlimited resources and you do not have unlimited people power. So take from this what feels useful to you. Use school marquees and other highly visible postings within the community. And lastly, if you can, do presentations directly to community groups. Use staff or commissioners themselves to go meet with community organizations and explain why redistricting matters. In those presentations and in your messaging, it's really important that you share the why about redistricting and not just the what, where, when, and how. Too often, government outreach to the community and to the public says the meeting is happening at X time on Y date. You can sign up at this link and you need to show up at this building. The important thing about redistricting is that it determines who's empowered and who's disempowered, who has voice and doesn't have voice. It shapes your local democracy for a decade. And all of those things explain the stakes to people and hopefully get them more engaged than simply giving them the logistics. Okay, here's the state law on required hearings. As you probably know, you're required to hold at least 4 hearings, 1 before publishing a draft map, 2 after publishing a draft map. At least 1 has to be on a weekend or after 6 p.m. on a weekday. And if they're included in standing meetings, they must start at a time certain. I know you're doing way more than this already, and so kudos to you for doing that. Our best practices are things that you're already doing. 1, hold way more than 4 hearings. If you can, hold all hearings in the evenings or on weekends, so standard work hours are not a barrier to the public's participation. Hold hearings in different parts of the county. I get the sense you're doing this already. If you're doing them in person, which I know you are, make sure all locations are accessible via public transit and to people with disabilities. If you do remote hearings, dedicate specific parts of the, I should just say county, dedicate specific hearings to specific parts of the county so residents know when they're supposed to show up. The state law on public input and testimony. The state law says the public must be able to provide public testimony at hearings, and it must be able to submit testimony or draft maps in writing and electronically. I would urge you to go much further than this. Meet people where they are at. Have commissioners or staff go and speak to community organizations and take their input at meetings in the community. You may have to publicly notice those meetings. If you discuss redistricting matters, you bring a quorum, you'll have to work with your council in order to figure out how exactly you notice or don't notice, how you stay in line with the Brown Act. But you can go to community organizations, meet them where they're at, and seek their input there. You can hold pop-ups at popular community events where you can hand out a community of interest testimony template, carry maps of the county, let people actually work with maps, point things out, talk things over while they're at a farmer's market or they're at a soccer game or anything of that kind, and give testimony right then and there on a form that you've provided. You can issue a survey and publish it on social media, asking people a variety of questions about their representation, about where their district lines are and where they want them to be. And of course, you can make map drawing software available to the public. One key here is to emphasize for people, in order to participate using that map drawing software, they do not have to submit a full district, nor do they have to submit a full district map of every district in the county. Just mapping their community of interest, no matter how small it might be, even if it's a couple blocks, is valuable in your process. And you need to let people know that they don't need to be experts on the entire county in order to use your map drawing software and provide you with something useful. Here's a photo from the city of Sunnyvale's districting process. They used the pop-ups I described a moment ago. They had city staff go into the community and at a variety of events, took these, you can see the poster board with different map options on the left, and you can see a survey that they had community members fill out about their options in the photo on the right. This created far more engagement, as you might expect, than holding a meeting that people had to travel to at a set time and at a set place in a building they might be unfamiliar with, giving public comment that maybe they've never done before. This sort of meeting people where they're at is what generated the most public participation in the city of Sunnyvale. Okay, the state law on language access requires that you post translated redistricting content in Spanish on the county's website, the webpage dedicated to redistricting, and a live translation be made available at a redistricting hearing like this if requested at least 72 hours before the hearing. I would urge you to go much further than this in making your process accessible and reachable for under-participating communities, including limited English speakers. First, find the neighborhoods and the communities and the towns that are not as engaged in this county's politics and put in some extra legwork to make sure they know what's going on. Go beyond your standard social media outlets. The county probably has a Facebook page, a Twitter page, a Nextdoor page. But lots and lots of language communities aren't on those social media outlets. They use WhatsApp, WeChat, and others. Go there and meet people where they're at. You might have to translate your social media outreach in order to do so. I would urge you to translate all of your outreach materials and use ethnic media extensively. And also, I would urge you to partner with trusted messengers and compensate them if necessary. If you have community leaders or social media influencers who've been rooted in the community for 30 years, they have the trust of various communities that you're having a hard time reaching. Provide them with redistricting copy and ask them to go be your ambassador to the community you're trying to reach. And lastly, research shows that when you're trying to reach disengaged communities that have not typically participated in government, big blocks of text don't work. Providing the logistical details in a notice doesn't work. Use graphics, images, visuals, find ways to convey the power of redistricting other than through blocks of text. With that, I'm ready to wrap up. I want to note for you that we have a website that has a wide range of resources on local redistricting, including best practices documents, toolkits, guides, trainings, and so on. That's at commoncause.org/local redistricting 2021. And we're also happy to field questions at all times. We have a website dedicated for that purpose, an email address for that purpose, redistrictingca commoncause.org. I recognize that much of the content here today was familiar to you already, and that for some of you, this was old hat. But I hope that some portions of today's presentation were useful and provided some new ideas about how to reach the community and make your process as accessible as possible. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Mr. Stein, thank you very much. That was a thorough presentation, and all of us, I'm sure, are greatly appreciative of that. Let me inquire of my colleagues on the commission if there are any questions at all for Mr. Stein. I'm not seeing any hands or any questions, so perhaps I can venture forth if I might for a moment, Mr. Stein. I'm curious as to these communities, whether they're cities or counties or congressional redistricting commissions, the number of meetings that they have where they go out into the community and engage in all of this outreach, for lack of a better word. Do you have some rough idea as to, on an approximate number, how many of those meetings those commissions actually engage in?
It depends entirely on the jurisdiction. So the city of Los Angeles, which is enormous, of course, is holding dozens and dozens and dozens of hearings all over the city. Other cities that are smaller just do the statutory minimum of 4. San Bernardino County is very large, both in population and in geography. And in other similarly sized jurisdictions, sometimes they're cities that are as big as your county, like San Diego, for example. We're seeing, 8 to 10 to 12 to 15, maybe up to 20. What's happened in a number of jurisdictions, Mr. Chair, is that the hearings held at the beginning of the process, before people worked out the kinks in the process, had very, very few and sometimes 0 public participants. And so commissions that had intended to hold 10 are now saying, we probably need to redo our first 3, let's hold 13. So that's a ballpark, Mr. Chair. I wish I could give you more exact information, but I don't have that in front of me.
No, I appreciate that information, and frankly, the reason I ask is all of my colleagues on the commission are giving up a great deal of their time, and I'll indicate for your purposes, between our meeting on July 26th and what we expect to be the last meeting at the Board of Supervisors chambers on Pearl Harbor Day, we will have had 17 meetings. And I can certainly understand how beneficial it would be if commission members were to go out as a group, as the entire commission, to certain community events and to hold these pop-ups, as you mentioned, or to go out to different areas of the community that, as you've explained, may be less engaged in the process and may feel sort of passed by when redistricting comes around. But one of the issues that we have as a county is the enormity of our size. We don't have anywhere near the large population that the 800-pound gorilla to our west does. But in terms of geography, we dwarf it. And we're having meetings, for example, in places as far-flung as Yucca Valley and Yucaipa and Chino Hills and everywhere in between. So I'm wondering, on a more pragmatic level, doesn't it make more sense to try and use social media to try and get out the word to various groups, to let them know about the process, that it's ongoing, let them know about the meetings that we have scheduled, and do what we can to invite them to attend? Because otherwise, it places a tremendous burden on all of my colleague commissioners, and frankly, I don't think any of them signed up for that.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I understand where you're coming from entirely. I'm familiar with the basics of your calendar and how widely distributed your meetings are, all of which I compliment you A couple thoughts that may make what I'm suggesting feel a little bit more manageable. The first is, for example, in the city of Sunnyvale, where they went and had those pop-up events. They went to community fairs, they went to soccer fields, they went to farmers markets. It was staff of the city that held the staff for those events. They had the staff of the city had outreach staff that they used for COVID outreach or health outreach or a variety of other outreach purposes, as the public policy agenda of the city ebbs and flows. And so they asked those staff to go into the community to do the outreach on redistricting and then report back to the decision makers that were actually drawing district lines. In other instances, what commissions have done is that they've deputized an individual commissioner to go speak to a community organization or to attend a particular event that they in their private life might have been attending anyway. And they deputize them to go and attend as a commissioner in their official capacity and to talk with the community, to do outreach and to potentially take feedback. Now, you'd have to talk to your county council about whether they're comfortable with an individual commissioner going and speaking about commission business outside of a full quorum. But I've just noted that other commissions have taken those two approaches that don't require all of your commissioners to go en masse in person together to each of these events. And hopefully that makes this a little bit more manageable. Okay. But I also would like to co-sign your suggestion of social media and other forms of digital outreach, which are also incredibly important. And hopefully, as I noted before, will communicate the why of why redistricting is so important, as opposed to just the who, what, when, and where of how people can participate.
Okay. Mr. Stein, thank you. And if my colleagues will permit, I have just one more question, and then I think a number of my colleagues are next in line waiting for their turn to ask you some questions. Does your organization, by chance, have some pre-prepared informational handout that we might be able to use for, as you've called them, social influencers and others on Facebook, Instagram, and other social media websites? Because I think one of the things a number of us might be concerned about is in requesting that these influencers put the word out about the Redistricting Commission meetings, that they might add to that because we want so-and-so candidates to be sure that they keep their seats, and we don't want so-and-so elected, for goodness sake. So you've got to go out and you've got to make sure that you politic against those folks, attend these meetings, and let them know how you feel. We would want something obviously neutral, as you've said your organization is. So I'm hoping perhaps you might have prepared some sort of brochure or informational material that we could provide to social influencers to put on their websites or other social media platforms. Do you have things like that available for us?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we do. And for basically the same reasons you just identified. It's a way for us to get good, fair, balanced, nonpartisan information about redistricting out into the world. I recognize the concerns that you're operating under. They're extremely valid. If you can, I've been in communication via email in preparation for today's presentation with a number of your staff. If you can identify for me the right person to contact, I will send you a variety of resources in the days following this meeting.
I appreciate that greatly, Mr. Stein, and we will certainly have staff in contact with you post-haste about that.
Happy to help.
Thank you for that, and I think I saw some hands down here. Yes, Commissioner Basley.
Yes, to follow up a little bit on what the chairman has asked. As you know, because of the state requirements and the shortened amount of time that we have, the reality is that apparently because of the Brown Act and things, we won't be able to even discuss a map until October 6th, our October 6th meeting. And I think we have to get something before the Board of Supervisors by November 9th, 2nd. So we have a very short time to actually prepare maps and then to get comment. Have you heard from any other counties, that they all have the same problem to some extent? Have you had any interesting ideas on trying to get the word out? I like the idea of pop-ups and things, but again, we're really talking about maybe 2 weeks of time or 3 weeks of time that we could actually have something to show people at a pop-up event. So we're really talking about a very, very small amount of time to get that feedback. So have you heard anything from any other counties that what they're doing to try to get the word out?
Several thoughts, Mr. Commissioner. The first is, I recognize that nothing mobilizes people like a draft map. That we've seen that over and over and over. You can try to get people engaged, and you will get some folks engaged, but people really come out of the woodwork when you have a draft map to show them. So given that you have this tiny window between when draft maps can be published and when your final map is due, how do you replicate that dynamic? One thing you can do is you can use other kinds of maps of the county. So there's city maps, neighborhood maps. There's a variety of other maps used by a variety of county administrations and agencies that divide up the county in a variety of ways into service areas. The police have different maps that divide cities and counties into beats. The sheriff's office might have something similar. There's all these different kinds of maps that divide the county for a variety of public policy purposes. There's also heat maps of where different racial and ethnic communities live. And if you can create big poster boards of those, or you can post them all on your website, and you can get them in front of the public, it can replicate the experience of looking at a draft map. It can get people's brains moving well before that October, I think you said October 6th point at which you can release your first draft map, okay? So that's one approach you can take to get people stimulated before the draft map comes out. The other thing I would say is that other counties are operating as if their deadline is December 15th. That's the deadline for county redistricting in state law. And you may have had an ongoing conversation in San Bernardino County with your council and with other stakeholders about what your deadline is specifically and why it might be different from other counties. My understanding was that at one point in your process, your registrar of voters was asking for an earlier deadline than any other registrar of voters. I don't know if that's still true, and that's what explains why your deadline is in November when other counties have a deadline in December. But that may be something to discuss if it hasn't already been discussed to death with the relevant stakeholders in your county.
Thank you. I think ours is we need to get the recommendations to the Board of Supervisors, and then they have until December 15th is what I understand. So that's what that shortens our time a little bit. So thank you.
Understood. Thank you.
There, I think I forgot to push that button again, doggone it. Do I have any questions from this end? And then I'm going to remember my three alternates who are here today. Do I have any questions at all from any of the alternates for Mr. Stein? Mr. Anderson? Ms. Hazlett? Ms. Hazlett, are you sure?
Actually, really good question, but he answered it.
Well, we miss having you ask questions, I must confess. Mr. Reynolds, and
You asked the question, Judge. It was on the templates that were already created for social media influencers.
well, occasionally I get things right, and I'm glad when that happens. Thank you. Commissioner Reynolds, any questions at all for Mr. Stein? Mr. Stein, I want to thank you again for your presentation. It was very, very well presented and clearly very well thought out. And all of us here today, including members of the public who are with us, I'm sure appreciate the time that you spent on it. Thank you again.
Thank you for your time and good luck in your work.
Thank you much. All right. I think at this time we have a request from a public member to make some comments. And if I pronounce the names correctly, and I hope I do, I think this person's name is Lori Masonis. Is Ms. Masonis present?
Yes, I'm here.
Ma'am, good afternoon. Have I pronounced your name correctly?
Good, yes, thank you.
Well, I'm delighted to get it right. Please.
Thank you. First of all, thank you that you made this meeting, public. I'll be honest with you, I probably should have done my homework before coming here. I thought the meeting was primarily on the results of the 2020 census. It seems like it's more on the city districts for each city in San Bernardino County. which was something I was never in favor of. But maybe as I explained, maybe that might be a cause of concern that a lot of people don't really know what these meetings are for. You know, they might just think it's about the results of the 2020 census rather than just, like, for example, I come here and apparently he's speaking to like San Bernardino personnel and stakeholders. As a public member, I didn't know that. I thought it was open to the public. But that's just kind of where I'm at, where I've been here for 10 minutes listening to the presentation. I don't know what else to say.
Okay. Well, Ms. Masonis, first of all, let me thank you for taking time out of your day to be here. I understand a lot of people have better things to do with their time than come and attend a public meeting. Second, to the extent, and understand, we usually don't have a question and answer period between public speakers and commission members, but to the extent that I might be of some help, I feel it's incumbent upon me to try and be of some help, okay? Every 10 years, there's a census. And when the census is taken, there are new district lines that are drawn at both the congressional level and the county level.
I understand that.
We're here for the county level. We're not here for any city of Upland redistricting for the various council members or anything else. We're here to talk about the redistricting that affects the Board of Supervisors. Okay? Second, I'm sorry that we apparently haven't been doing a good enough job to reach you and perhaps other members of the public to let you know what our work is all about. I'd invite you to go online. We have a website online that will pretty much detail in some specificity, actually, what our function is, where the meetings we are going to hold will be held, and when, and what it is we are supposed to be doing to be able to present to the Board of Supervisors at our December 7th meeting at least 2 proposed maps for their consideration. Part of the commission's function is to do exactly that. We propose. We will have at least 2 maps drawn that we will present to the Board of Supervisors for their consideration. The ultimate decision about which map to adopt, whether it's a map that we present, if it's a map they themselves choose to draw, whatever it may be, that decision is entirely theirs. But our function is to make sure that we not only comply with what the law requires, but as Mr. Stein has told us and congratulated us for doing, we exceed the number of meetings. We have had meetings in a number of places throughout the county already, including the high desert. We have a Yucca Valley in Yucaipa and other meetings still to schedule. As I mentioned, between late July and our December 7th meeting, we have a total of 17 meetings calendared throughout the county. But to the extent you didn't know much or any of this, I would invite you again to check the website because you'll find much, if not all, of the information there that you need, Ms. Masonis. Does that help a little bit at least, I hope?
I think so. And then plus, help me if I misunderstood. So I guess by December 7th, whatever decision the Board of Supervisors decide on.
I don't know if they'll actually decide that at the December 7th hearing. I think, if I recall correctly, and my colleagues will correct me if I'm mistaken, and I apologize, my glasses keep fogging up. I can't see anything after about 2 minutes. I think they will have a little bit of time, perhaps a week or so, to come up with their map that they approve. I don't know that anything will be necessarily voted up or down at that December 7th hearing.
And that will affect the future congressional districting and so forth? Or
No,
not?
ma'am.
Okay.
That will affect, again, only the supervisorial districts for San Bernardino County supervisors, okay? Congressional redistricting is an entirely different breed of cat. We don't do any of that here, okay?
Okay, thank you. you so much for your time.
Ma'am, you are very welcome. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to come here and join us. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, do we have any further public requests for comment?
Not on this item. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. At this time, I believe we are grateful, as we always are, to have Ms. Pamela Williams here to receive any direction from the commission regarding any topics that the commission and its members would like to discuss at future commission meetings. And with that, I'll be happy to hear if we have, and I'm assuming we don't, Madam Secretary, any public comments on that agenda item?
No, sir.
All right, I'll be happy to hear from my colleagues on the commission if they have any such request. I'm looking at Judge King because she's been incredibly silent today, and I'm just surprised. Nothing down here? Commissioner Basley, please.
Yeah, I'm not sure what directions, but I would like to hear from other commissioners to follow up on the presenter, what he said about maps that are currently available that may help us with the communities of interest. Obviously, we know the geographic differences in the county and some of the natural boundaries that are there and some cities and things like that, but I was particularly interested in some of those ideas. I don't know what other commissioners think about that or if they're even available, such as the heat map that he was discussing there at the end. So I found that interesting. It may not be helpful, but for the next 3 or 4 weeks while we're kind of waiting to put something together, I don't think we need to worry about putting forth a map. These would be maps that are already available to the public, so we wouldn't be crossing that line of not being able to discuss even a draft map. But I found that fascinating, and I wouldn't mind seeing something, but I just don't even know what's available along those lines,
Yeah.
especially along the community of interest if there's something there. So.
Okay. Commissioner Basley, thank you. Any follow-up to Commissioner Basley's suggestion? Well, perhaps I could do this if I can direct a comment to Ms. Williams. Maybe it would be helpful to see whatever maps, in particular, at least at this point, our council might think might be useful. And it occurs to me we might have not only the old supervisorial district maps, but perhaps any beat maps, as Mr. Stein has suggested, to the extent there may be other maps that different organizations have for their purposes that might demonstrate different communities of interest throughout the various cities in the county. Those maps might be helpful for us to at least have access to, not because we're going to be drawing any maps in the meantime, but because when the time comes for those maps to be drawn, this will be yet further information for us to be able to have, and perhaps it might be of some assistance. And even if it's not of some assistance, it can't hurt to have it.
Sure,
That
no
would-
problem.
That would be my suggestion. Does that,
Do we need to take a motion?
I was going to
Yes.
say, if that meets with the approval of my colleagues, what I would do at this point is call for a motion so directing Ms. Williams to that end. Do I have such a motion?
Yes, I would move to direct staff to prepare something along the lines of what the chairman has proposed. I agree with all those suggestions.
I'll second.
And we have a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries.
Excuse me, Judge Davis, if I could clarify, was that Commissioner Creffield that placed the second?
He did. I
Thank you.
apologize, Madam Secretary. I thought I had mentioned that. I do have one more thing I would like to bring up, if I can, as direction to staff. I'm very interested in something Mr. Stein said in response to one of my questions, and that is that, if I understood him correctly, he has this pre-printed information or blurb that is available to provide to social media influencers and others on various platforms that is apolitical. It's neutral, but it simply explains what the process is, what's taking place in the process, and probably it'll provide us an opportunity to indicate where and when our meetings are, so that if members of the public wish to attend, they can. I would like to ask that staff obtain that information from Mr. Stein with all deliberate speed. That is something that I think we could get out to social media influencers fairly quickly. And to the extent it might even be helpful to have on our own website, perhaps it might be an additional spot to have that. And if there are further comments or suggestions along those lines, please, I'd be interested to hear from any of my colleagues concerning them. I haven't heard from my alternates recently. Ms. Hazlett, please.
Good afternoon. So I thought what was interesting that Mr. Stein presented to us was the why. And so I don't know if County Council or Ms. Williams can say, I would like to be deputized so that I can get the why out there. I attend multiple city council meetings on a regular basis from my position as the CEO of the Greater Ontario Business Council. But I've also reached out through our organization, through our website, through all of ours, to make sure that folks are aware that I'm an appointed commissioner so that they have any questions. But if I had something in addition to that that answered that why, it's important for communities of interest and folks in our community, including our business leaders, to be engaged in this process. And I think that folks say, just like our public speaker said today, they're not only intimidated by it, but they're just uncertain of it. They look at why this process is so important and how the changes to supervisorial lines could impact them, not just as an elected official, but as communities of interest and business communities. I thought it was interesting that the graphic that he put up of the city of Watts, and we look at what we are dealing with in our communities, especially in our national forest and those areas, when you do have something like a fire that we're dealing with. My position over the years, having to deal with multiple congressional offices, multiple supervisorial offices, just to get the resources to where they need to go, it is a ping-ponging effect that happens. And so I think I don't know if it's being deputized or if I have that latitude that I can talk about this at city council meetings, at our own meetings that our organization holds in the community. I just need an affirmation. You all aren't smiling, so I think I'm trying to read your eyes. So mask down, please, so I can see what your thoughts are on that. But I'm willing to do that, and I'm out in the community, and heck, I'll even go to a farmer's market if that's what it needs to be. I just don't want to make sure I'm not in violation of the Brown Act and that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing in this position as an alternate commissioner.
Sure. I'll turn it over to Julie to answer that question.
Ms. Hazlett, thank you so much. And I'm not sure if County Council needs some time perhaps to investigate or explore that particular option. I can certainly say personally I'd love nothing more than to turn Ms. Hazlett loose in the community. I think she would be an absolutely wonderful spokesperson for what the commission is all about, but I'm not sure that we want her to potentially run afoul of any Brown Act rules or requirements or the like. Ms. Herber, is that something you can answer today, or would you like some time to review that?
Well, I can initially say that it wouldn't be a Brown Act violation if it was just her individually speaking at events, because to have a Brown Act violation, you need to have a majority of the elected or the appointed body to participate. So assuming she was by herself, it wouldn't be a Brown Act issue. However, we don't have authorizing her to attend pop-up events on the current agenda, and that does create issues under the Brown Act because as the commission, you need to vote and provide direction on things that are on the agenda. And so my suggestion is that perhaps the commission take a motion and a second and a vote to direct staff that for the next meeting that you have, I believe on the 15th, we authorize Commissioner Hazlett to attend various events to advertise the good work of the Advisory Redistricting Commission. And if there was someone else that wanted to also participate, that could be agendized also.
I was going to suggest, is it possible to have the motion phrased in such a way that any other individual commission member who wished to so participate, as does Ms. Hazlett, would be able to do so, understanding, and I think it's important for all of us to remember, they would be acting and speaking in their individual capacity and not in any sort of deliberative capacity as a commission member. But at least it would be helpful to the extent members of the public would actually get to see a commission member. And to the extent Ms. Hazlett could answer questions about our role and what we typically do, I think it would be wonderful to have her and any of my colleagues here, including the other alternates, out in the community. Could we have a motion phrased so broadly, Ms. Server, or do we need to have it specifically identify other commission members that may wish to be so delegated with that duty?
I think on that particular case, I'm going to work with staff on our agenda posting for the 15th. I am concerned that becomes very broad, but I would like to, I hear what the commission is asking, and I don't know that it's necessary for all to sign up today. But we do have to have enough information so that it's clear about who is doing what.
Okay. Perhaps I could phrase it in this fashion. To the extent my colleagues will allow me, and they may get the hook, as they used to say in vaudeville, and reel me in. But what I was going to propose was perhaps county council could agendize each of the commission members being so delegated and authorized by the commission to speak, or at least to attend these pop-up events, to answer informational questions only, should they choose to do so. That way, perhaps at the next meeting, when this is an agendized item and up for discussion and a vote, we will find out if Ms. Hazlett is going to have others on the commission that wish to do as she so greatly is willing to do, or if she's going to be our voice in the wilderness out there among everyone. I think that might be a way to give you an opportunity to explore what you need to, with the understanding that all of us at the next meeting may indicate that we choose to take advantage of such an opportunity if afforded it. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, Judge Davis, I think it does. May I suggest that perhaps we also include, ask that people who attend pop-up events report back to the commission, and that can be appropriately agendized at the meeting following the 15th and future agendas.
I think that's a wonderful suggestion. Now, would you, Judge King, do you have something?
Yes, staff is going to be obtaining these flyers that Common Cause has prepared. And it very well might be that these individuals going out into the community would like to distribute some of those flyers. So I think that that should be, to the extent that that may be a possibility after we have an opportunity to review them and see what they are, in fact, at the next meeting, that we should be able to have that as part of their charge, that they will have these available to them. So I'm just concerned that if we limit the agenda item description to not include potential distribution of those flyers, that then we would have to wait another meeting to do that. And so perhaps the agenda item could encompass that potentially if indeed we determine that those flyers are something that we would want to distribute.
Ms. Server, how does that approach sound to you? Although I might go a little bit more broadly than my colleague and say informational materials, not just including the Common Cause brochure or flyer, however it may be prepared, but any other materials that we may be able to put our hands on or create in the meantime to help explain what our function is and what the process is all about. Is that too broad for you, or do you think that would suffice?
No, I think that would be fine. I do want to just go back, though, because Judge Davis, we had your direction to staff to gather the material. Do you think we need a motion and a second on that? And then a motion and a second on the addition to the agenda regarding commissioners attending the pop-up events?
I think we do, and I think it's far neater if we have those as two separate motions. So let me backtrack then, and perhaps I will move to direct staff to obtain the Common Cause brochures or other informational material that Mr. Stein mentioned today for dissemination to social media influencers and others who use social media platforms, so that staff can get a hold of that as soon as possible. That would be my motion.
Second.
We have a
Right,
second from
Commissioner
Commissioner Jernigan? Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposition, the motion carries. And the last motion, I'm trying to think of the most succinct way to phrase it. The last motion I would phrase perhaps would be this, that we agendize for the next meeting the view of county council that each of the commission members may be delegated with and authorized by the commission to attend any pop-up events or other community events strictly for informational purposes to members of the public who may be attending, and to make sure that any informational materials that may otherwise be available be provided to those commission members who are prepared to attend those community events. And this is not obligatory. Commission members may choose not to participate for whatever reason, but those that do would be so authorized by the commission to do so. Does that sound appropriate, council?
Yes, I believe it does.
Okay. Any further comments on that before I call for the motion? No? I will go ahead and make that motion. Do I have a second for that motion?
Second.
Mr. Jernigan, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion passes as well. And this has been a very, very good discussion today, for which I am very grateful. Thank you, ma'am. And at this time, I think I'm going to call for general public comments. And I hope I'm I hope I'm reading this name correctly. If I am, I think I can pronounce it correctly. I think I have Miss Janice Elliott who would like to address us, please. Miss Elliott, welcome.
Good afternoon, Chairman Judge Davis and Commissioners. And first of all, I want to thank you for having this meeting here in Upland. I've been a resident here since 2001, and I have learned so much from particularly the Common Cause video. I am speaking on my own behalf, but I am a city council member here. I've been on the council for 5 years, and we will be going through a redistricting process, and that video was very, very helpful. The only thing I wanted to mention is that Upland has two supervisors, and I think as a community of interest, it would be really nice if the district lines were drawn so that we would have one commissioner. We have events, we have situations where we need to reach out to our supervisors, and it's hard when you've got two of them, and sometimes it affects the whole city, and both of them need to be in the know of it. So it would be helpful for me, and I think for the community, but I can't speak on their behalf, I'm just speaking on my behalf, to have one supervisor representing us. Thank you so much for your time.
Ms. Elliott, thank you so much. I'm always delighted to see someone else from my hometown here speaking. So, thank you so much. Madam Secretary, do we have any other public comment requests?
No, Judge Davis, that's all.
All right. Do we have any general comments from my colleagues on the commission? Commissioner Reynolds, please.
This goes back to staff direction. Didn't get a chance to jump up and say anything before public comments, but I've got 3 things to ask that they might be redundant in lieu of some of the conversation that's happened, but to basically expound upon the previous public speaker. I was wondering, and I don't recall everything that's on our website regarding the work that we're doing, but my first question is, can we make sure that we clarify what our work is? And it's only for the supervisory redistricting only.
I'm sorry, Commissioner, if we could just have the commission reopen the direction to staff, since we moved on from that and then went to public comment. Reopen that item, please.
Madam Secretary, I can certainly do that. At this time, I will entertain a motion to reopen comments with directions to staff through Ms. Williams, so that we can, in fact, hear from one of our colleagues, Commissioner Reynolds. Do we need a motion for that, Madam Secretary? We do. Then I will so move to reopen for that limited purpose.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. Commissioner Reynolds, I apologize. That was my administrative miscue. The floor is yours.
It's okay, thank you. So, yeah, the first question is that we can clarify exactly what we're doing to allay anyone's ideas of what we're not doing. The second thing I had was, and I don't know how much detail that we can get into, but also to reiterate what our time limits are in regards to mapping, when we're getting the data, when we're able to look at it and actually draw maps, and then when our preparation for submittal is. We have that very, very narrow little window, and the same thing is to give the public an idea of that very narrow window that we've got to work within. And then the last thing, of course, is our submittal deadline to the county board for their approval, just also so that they're aware of what the process is and what we're doing exactly, within the limits of whatever information that we can put on the website. And that's all I had.
Commissioner, thank you. Anybody have any further comments along? Yes, Commissioner Jernigan.
Just a question on the update on the workshop for the week of the 12th. We had, from the last meeting, we had requested that.
Yes, as a follow-up to that, we are working on scheduling the workshop with the commission at the board chambers on Thursday, October 14th at 6 p.m. And so you will note that on the next agenda for September 15th's meeting, which will be released on Thursday, we will add an agenda item on that agenda will be to adopt a revised commission calendar, which will reflect that that added date, which is October 14th at 6 p.m.
Thank you.
Commissioner, thank you. Any further?
I just have one more comment, and as a follow-up to that last meeting as well, we will be providing a report on public outreach that has been conducted thus far with regards to the redistricting of the supervisorial districts, and that will be on the September 15th agenda as well.
That's wonderful, Ms. Williams. Thank you very much for that. Did I see? Yes, Commissioner Nicklin.
I had a comment in regard to Mr. Stein's presentation for Ms. Williams and her staff. I'm interested in the idea of surveys. A lot of doodle polls, different types of surveys that can be done online. Is that something we could maybe look into having that the community could utilize to give us feedback and you know, what their interests are and where they would like to see this commission head? I think it would be a kind of a simplistic way to get some just overall feedback of what
We don't
public is
currently
thinking?
have a survey tool, but we do have an email address where we can accept comments 24/7 with regards to whatever they want to, we'll accept anything that they want to share with us. And then those public comments are submitted to you in your folders so that it can help inform the process. So we do that through an email, but we would have to look into a survey tool if that's the route the commission wanted us to explore.
Okay.
Would you like to make that as a motion, Commissioner, or do you think that having a 24/7 accessible email might be sufficient? What's your pleasure?
I like the idea of the survey, but unfortunately with our time constraints, I'm not sure that's something we would be able to kind of get off the ground in such a short amount of time. So I think the email is definitely sufficient. We'll just kind of put that out in our outreach material, as I'm sure it already is.
Yes, it is. Yes, that information is on the cover of every agenda where they can participate in the process, draw maps, email questions, comments about the process.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner, thank you so much. Any further comments for Ms. Williams, or any further suggested direction for Ms. Williams?
I had a,
Judge,
sorry,
oh, I apologize. Commissioner Basley.
I had a kind of a follow-up to Commissioner Nickham's question, and that has to do with crossing over to current Board of Supervisors. You know, they all have their own newsletters that they put out either weekly or monthly. And I'm wondering if you know, somehow we could incorporate some kind of survey. I'm just trying to try to play this out in my mind, that they would get the information and give it to us, or maybe they'll be asking for it for when they have to draw a map. But along the same lines that they were asking, the county currently has resources to do that, and I'm not sure if we can cross over into county newsletters or board member newsletters where there are surveys conducted routinely for information that they're seeking.
I can share that the board offices do have a calendar, your calendar for the commission meetings, and we do share with them also the social media posts, both in English and Spanish, to share on their social media platforms. So we do communicate with the supervisors and their offices about the commission meetings and when they're held.
And they haven't indicated that they are currently seeking individually any information from the public?
I have not been told that, no.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner, can I ask before I hear from one of my colleagues, are you asking that perhaps information concerning the commission's website, meeting schedules and so forth be included in the newsletters of the various supervisors?
Yes, to some extent. We have our site that, or the county's redistricting site, that has information about what the commission is doing specifically, but I'm thinking there are other resources that the county has that can cross over, and so they are pointed back to, to the website and to the commission. And maybe we're already doing that on those resources, but I was just trying to think along those lines that we do have. The county has the ability to conduct surveys already. I mean, I'm not sure if the commission needs to reinstate some, or to start that, reinitiate something like that. But if there are those resources available that we could do exactly, what the commissioner was mentioning, I don't know.
So at the next meeting, we will be providing a report on all the public outreach that we've done thus far. So once you hear that report, if there's any other groups that you think that would be helpful that we engage with, or other opportunities for sharing information about the commission's meetings, we're happy to do so.
Okay,
but our public information officer will be here at the next meeting to provide all that information.
Oh, that'll be great. Thank you.
Wonderful. Ms. Williams, thank you very much. I
My
thought I saw
pleasure.
a hand over here, did I not? Apparently not. Let me ask my alternates, lest they think I have forgotten about them, and I shudder at the thought. Mr. Anderson, any further comments or suggestions for Ms. Williams?
All my comments have been ping-ponging back and forth up there, so I don't need my answer.
Wonderful. Let me ask Commissioner Reynolds, any further comments by way of direction to Ms. Williams, or any further thoughts?
No, just thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Hazlett, I have saved the best for last in you. Any further suggestions for direction to Ms. Williams?
No, I'm just excited to move forward.
Well, as are we all. So thank you for that. That being the end of that agenda item.
Excuse me, Judge Davis?
Yes,
So
Madam Secretary.
Commissioner Reynolds provided direction threefold.
You did.
One, to clarify what the commission is doing. Two, to reiterate the time limits to draw the maps and prepare for submission. And then three, to clarify the submittal deadline to the Board of Supervisors. So we would need a motion and a second to add those.
Would you like to have that done individually or collectively?
Collectively, I believe would be fine.
All right. We do have the 3 suggestions from Commissioner Reynolds to find out exactly what work is being detailed that the commission does on our website. That's number one. Second would be to be sure that our website reiterates the time limits the commission is under with regard to mapping and submittal of maps. And the last point is related to number 2, particularly with regard to submittal of maps to the Board of Supervisors and when their final action is due with regard to at least 2 proposed maps, which they are free to accept or reject or modify as they see fit. That will be my motion to so direct Ms. Williams. Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Well, let me thank everybody in attendance today, not just my colleagues, but those members of the public who have taken time out of their day to join us. I am at this point going to adjourn today's meeting of the Advisory Redistricting Commission. Our next scheduled meeting will be on Wednesday, September 15th at 10 a.m. in the Yucaipa City Council chambers. We hope to see some of you there, and I look forward to seeing all of my colleagues there on that occasion. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your afternoon. We are adjourned.